What's up guys, my name is Ace, and after 4 full seasons of Modern Warfare 3, we've got a ton of aftermarket parts in this game. So in today's video, I wanted to do a recap and share my top 10 aftermarket parts and class setups, at least currently in Modern Warfare 3. Keeping in mind we're focusing on the weapon aftermarket parts, so actual conversion kits, not the attachment aftermarket parts like the Jack Cutthroat stock for instance. And without further ado, let's dive right into this. And I did also order these at least roughly how I would order them. So we're going to start it off with number 10 on my list here, which is the Jack Jawbreaker kit for the KV broadside shotgun. And this is the one that turns it into more like a battle rifle or even marksman rifle. And especially now that the muzzle attachments are actually working properly on this in actual matches and not just in the firing range, this kit is really solid and super enjoyable to use. I just love how consistent it is with a 3-shot kill. It's actually a guaranteed 3-shot kill anywhere in the body at any range, as long as you're not shooting through some form of cover. And that just feels really good to have that consistency with a gun. Even though it does still have a fair amount of recoil, that is something you have to prepare for and compensate for. But again, now that we have that muzzle attachment available, that actually makes it even better than it was pre-patch, because you can get that recoil under control nicely with attachments. Next up, I have a kit that I actually kind of forgot about for a really long time, even though it was a good kit when it first came out. This is the Jack Backsaw kit for the Holger 5.56 assault rifle. And with this one, well, I'll be the first to admit it is far from a versatile gun. It's really not good at longer ranges. If you treat it right and you keep yourself up close and personal, this kit can actually dominate very effectively with a super fast 254 millisecond time to kill. Now, the thing to remember about this kit is we do have that spread with our shots, and it spreads on a horizontal plane. So you're firing 2 bullets per shot, and they'll always be horizontally spread out. And that's why this kit doesn't do well at longer ranges, because it just becomes less and less likely that both of those bullets will hit as you stretch the range out. So that's why I like using what I call my SMG build with this, where I keep myself much more up close and personal. You got a massive magazine capacity on this, and also really good handling considering that huge magazine capacity. So if you guys haven't used this one in a little while, like myself, again, I just totally forgot this kit existed, I'd recommend giving it another shot because it's very enjoyable as long as you're treating it right. But then let's move on to number 8 on my list, and this is the Jack Raven kit, which honestly has always been a great kit on the MCW. And for a little while at least, it was by far the best way to use the MCW back when they eliminated the headshot multiplier for the base gun without eliminating it for this kit. But since then, they did bring the headshot multiplier back, so the base gun is much more viable now than it was for that little window where it didn't have a headshot multiplier. But in saying that, I still kind of prefer using the MCW with the Jack Raven kit, at least in public matches where I'm trying to be a little more aggressive and flanky and staying off the radar as well. And I would say this gun really excels in those close to medium ranges while still being able to handle gunfights at longer ranges, but that's just not ideally where you want to be taking your gunfights. And just a big thing to remember here as well is up close and personal, all you have to do is mix one headshot in with body shots and you will get a 225 millisecond time to kill, which is insanely fast for this game. After that one, let's get into the pistol category, and we'll talk about the Jack Ferocity kit for the Renetti. And this is a kit where early on it was really, really good. Then they nerfed it pretty hard, it wasn't great, and then it got a buff a couple months back, I believe it was. And that buff made this actually better than many of the SMGs in this game. So with this kit, I really like using that 50-round drum magazine so you can just stay on the move and get kill after kill after kill without having to constantly reload. We got a really solid time to kill potential up close at 280 milliseconds. That's highly competitive with SMGs in this game. And while it does have a fair amount of recoil, it's not that difficult to control. I find myself stretching out ranges just fine with this. And really the only big downside to this as a secondary weapon is it does take quite a bit longer to swap to this compared to many of the other handguns, like just a standard Renetti or a Core 45 for instance. So I won't necessarily use this on every single one of my class setups, but I do like having it on certain ones, especially if I want something that's as reliable as a primary weapon in my secondary slot. And also, just for fun, sometimes I like using this as my primary weapon just because it is that good. Next, moving on to number 6 on my list, this is the Jack Signal Burst, specifically on the DM56. It's much better on this gun compared to the Holger 5.56. And with this one, it did get some buffs recently, and it's just so solid. It's got a really accurate 4-round burst now. We've got decent handling stats with the build that I like using. Our time to kill potential with a 1-burst kill is really fast at 240 milliseconds, and it really has a solid range potential as well. I find myself handling long-range gunfights really effectively with this, and honestly, even the closer range engagements, as long as I'm on point with my shots, it can hold its own just fine. It's just a bit unforgiving if you miss that first burst. But overall, on longer range maps, I've been having a great time pulling this gun out, and it's actually one of my favorite longer range builds at the moment in multiplayer. Next, for number 5 on my list, we've got yet another burst gun that also recently got a buff. This is the Jack Headhunter kit on the Rival 9. And this one is also really solid now after the updates. With this, we get a ridiculous rate of fire within the burst at about 1,200 rounds per minute, with also a very short burst delay, so it's super spammable as a burst gun. And our time to kill potential with this is a consistent 260 milliseconds, and that has a potential to stretch out to any range, although this does excel in more close to mid-range engagements. And since the buff to this, it's a totally different gun compared to how it behaved when it first launched, and I found it to be so much more enjoyable. It really wasn't that great before the rework, and now that they have reworked it, I'm having a blast with it. So I actually pull this one out quite a bit these days. Then for number 4 on my list, I've got the Jack Shadow Titan kit for the Bruin Mark 9. It really excels in mid to longer range engagements, but honestly it holds its own just fine up close. It's got pretty solid handling for an LMG, it keeps you off the radar by default, it's got a built-in suppressor on it, the recoil is very, very manageable, and our time to kill potential without the open bolt delay is very fast, especially when we're looking at longer ranges. However, we do have to consider the fact that it does have a 50 millisecond open bolt delay, and that is the one big downside to this, but generally speaking, I don't find that to be a massive hindrance. And as long as I'm treating it right and I'm not sprinting into gunfights or trying to take super close quarters engagements on a regular basis, I've managed to find a ton of success with this, and it's just such a good, versatile, all-around kit that it definitely deserves a spot fairly high up on my list. But next, for number 3, I've got the Jack Scimitar kit for the FJX Horus. And this one might seem a little bit weird because it actually gives you a slightly slower time to kill than the base version of the gun, but the benefits that come to that, like the massive increase to our range, the 60 round magazine by default while still maintaining amazing handling stats, and also the really nice improvement to our recoil just makes for a nice versatile SMG. And this has actually become one of my go-to guns if I really need to carry a team because it allows me to be aggressive while maintaining versatility, so I can hold my own against most SMGs up close. Even though they might technically outgun me by a little bit, I can rely on my gun skill to still outgun them, while also being able to hold my own just fine at mid-range against the assault rifles out there. And then, of course, for that carry potential, having that 60-round magazine is huge because it allows me to deal with a bunch of enemies at once without having to constantly stop and reload. And I've actually found myself going back and using this kit quite often lately. Then for number 2 on my list, we have a gun that was really hyped up for a short period of time, and then it sort of faded away. This is the Jack Nightshade kit on the DG58 LSW LMG. With this one, we've got extremely solid handling, an amazing time to kill potential, especially if we land just one headshot in within 19 meters. It's extremely accurate and easy to control. And like I said, it was super hyped up for a period of time when it first got the huge buff to it, because it used to be really bad because it was really hard to control the recoil. But then they nerfed the base version of the DG58, and then it seems like a lot of people just dropped this kit as well, even though this kit didn't get nerfed. It was only the base version of the gun that got nerfed. And that means this kit is still an amazing choice to be using, and yet I don't really see people using it all that often anymore like I was for that short period of time. So if you guys haven't tried this one lately, definitely give it a shot because it's still one of the best guns in the entire game. And with that out of the way, we can move into the number 1 aftermarket part on my list right now. This is the Jack Decimator kit for the Lockman Shroud. This is the kit that turns the Lockman Shroud into full auto while maintaining the default suppressor on it, so you're staying off the radar. The recoil is manageable, it's easy enough, especially for an SMG. I have no problem controlling that recoil. And the main thing I really like about this kit is our time to kill potential is 225 milliseconds up close, which will outgun every single SMG in this game aside from the WSP Swarm. And even then, it's neck and neck with the WSP Swarm time to kill wise, but it has a very noticeably better maximum damage range than the WSP Swarm. It's more accurate than the WSP Swarm, and just in general, it's got way more versatility than the WSP Swarm does. And as a result, if you are an SMG player, if you like getting yourself right up close and personal, there's not much in the game that can consistently beat you if you're using this gun and playing to its strengths. Now, I will admit, it's not quite as versatile as some of the other guns on this list that I've mentioned. While you can kind of stretch the ranges out, it really doesn't excel at mid to longer ranges. But since I generally like playing more on the aggressive side, for me at least, I find myself absolutely dominating with this kit when I treat it right. And I definitely recommend giving it a shot if you haven't already. And with that, that's finally going to wrap it up for my top 10 aftermarket parts in Modern Warfare 3, at least as of the end of Season 4. Now, of course, we're constantly getting new aftermarket parts. We're probably going to be seeing some weapon balancing with Season 5, and maybe that will change some of these kits as well. But this should at least give you a solid list of guns to try out for the first time or go back to if you haven't used them in quite a while. And you should be able to find a ton of fun and success with them. Now, of course, at the end of the day, this is just my list, and I'd love to hear from you guys in those comments down below. Are there any aftermarket part conversion kits that weren't on this list that you feel deserve a spot? And also, what is your favorite aftermarket part in the game right now? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.